Welcome back to the Meditation and Mindfulness Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Zaremba, and this is episode 11. And today, I'd like to talk to you about how to meditate in a toxic world. That's right, folks. We live in a toxic world. It's not the world of yesterday. Not only is the environment polluted, but the airwaves are polluted. Our minds are therefore polluted. The food we eat is polluted. It's toxic. There are so many variables and consumables that can increase the toxic load of our bodies, of our minds, and of our emotions. So it's an important consideration to make when you're trying to meditate in a world like this that can be overcrowded, busy, sometimes noisy, sometimes, just fully distracting in a lot of ways. So, how do you practice meditation in the modern world? In a world where we're easily distracted by our phones or our televisions, we're consumed by the stress of our lives, of our jobs, of our pressures, of our responsibilities. And life can just seem like one thing after another. And sure, life is going to be one thing after another regardless. But what we can manage is our own mind. So how do you meditate and manage your mind in a toxic world? Well, it takes a great deal of practice. And this is why it's important to establish a regular meditation practice. Because of the toxic level that the world is, we need to be of constant efforts toward detoxifying our own mind, our own emotions, and maintaining a low toxic level within our bodies. Of course, it's impossible, or quite difficult, I should say, to be completely pure in a world that's far from completely pure. But it's important to maintain and manage a certain relationship with the world as it is, because we can't just run off into the mountains and go live in the Himalayas like your favorite Tibetan yogi or enlightened being. Of course, that sounds like a lot of fun, but let's face it, we live in a modern world. We're used to modern things. We like our cars. We like our technology. We like living in comfortable houses, apartments. We like having the convenience of the modern world. And there's nothing wrong with the world if you're in balance with it. If you're able to have a healthy relationship with the world, then you can still practice your meditation in the modern world. And even though the world is overcrowded, highly toxic environmentally, etc., we can manage. And the way that we manage is by, first, establishing a regular meditation practice, a daily meditation time when we sit down to meditate regardless, every single day. Now, of course, there are things that'll come up in life that maybe throw you off for a day or two here or there. But we're so dedicated to the practice that even if we, for some crazy reason, manage to miss a day or two here or there, we just get right back on the path of our regular meditation practice. Now, if you're someone who has a difficult time establishing a regular habit of meditation, then there are some tips and tricks that you can, make it a little bit more convenient for your schedule. I recommend meditating in the morning when you know you're going to have that extra 15-20 minutes of time that you can sit down. And if it takes getting up an extra 15 or 20 minutes earlier, it's worth putting it there, because in the morning you want to start out fresh. You want to start out new. You want to clear the mind, clear the emotions, get the body, mind, and emotions ready for the day so that your mindfulness practice throughout the day happens effortlessly and spontaneously, as it should. And of course, there are times when we need to return to our center, breathe, and regain our sense of equilibrium, balance, perhaps after a certain situation or scenario that we might encounter throughout the day. It's important to know some little tips, tricks, and hacks, like focusing on your breath for just a minute, just going and sitting still, even for a moment, can help return your center. If you're practicing your meditation daily, which is why the meditation will establish that strength. It will establish that deep root of your stillness that can carry you throughout the day, so that when you do notice that your mind is getting busy or you're caught up in a situation or something's up, you can always just go and sit for 1 minute and regain that morning meditation equilibrium that you found in your meditation. So, the morning meditation is important for that reason. It establishes your vibe throughout the day, your frequency, and the deeper, stronger, longer you can meditate in the morning, the easier it will be to sustain that higher state of consciousness throughout the day. Makes sense. So, but how do you get that morning meditation in every day? Well, you have to put it in as part of your morning routine. I mean, unless you're the type of person who just can't get it together at all, it's not difficult to insert it into your morning routine because, hey, you got to get up in the morning. You got to do something in the day. So between that period of time, there are normally things like eating breakfast, taking a shower, getting dressed that you have to do. That's part of your routine. So you just make meditation a part of that routine. Even if it's 10 minutes to start. Sit down, 10 minutes, work your way up 15, 20 minutes. By the time you're established in a 20-minute, 25-minute, 30-minute meditation in the morning, that's when you start to notice some consistent levels of awareness that you're able to maintain throughout the day. So the longer and the deeper you can meditate, the easier it will be to sustain that level throughout the day in your mindfulness practice and avoid a lot of the toxicity that the world can put in your face. When you're doing your morning meditation, you're establishing the right mindset for the rest of the day. And that mindset will be from where you make your choices. And you'll make your choices wisely because you'll be in a higher state of consciousness. So you'll see and feel better. You'll see better. And your mind will be clearer. So the decisions that you make will be better. One of the tricks I like to do in the morning is have a cup of coffee. By waking up, having that cup of coffee, when I sit down to meditate, I'm alert, I'm awake, I'm motivated, I'm ready to go. So I get up, have some breakfast, take a shower, and then sit down to meditate. And that's part of the morning routine. So if you have a difficult time creating a morning routine, you just have to try like setting an alarm on your phone. Just like you set an alarm to wake up, set an alarm to meditate. If you know you wake up at a certain time, it's going to take you, let's say, 15 minutes to eat breakfast, 15 minutes to shower. So 30 minutes after you wake up, you have your alarm set for a reminder to meditate. That might be one way to get you going in the morning. But it's got to be something that you use your willpower and your discipline to do. If you can't sit down to meditate, even for 10 minutes in the beginning, then there's just probably no chance that you're going to be successful. You have to make time for it. You have to. It's one of those things. So as you make time for anything that's important in your life. So this has got to be one of those things. And I assume those that are listening to this podcast or watching on YouTube are interested in meditation and making meditation a habit, because only when it's a habit, only when it's consistent, will you derive the transcendental benefits that meditation offers. And it's true. It does work. It is real. It is a practice that can change you. It can transform your mind, which transforms your life. Because from your mind, you perceive the world. From your emotions, you feel life. And from your body, your health and mobility and feeling good physically will enhance your life. So all of these things are affected in your meditation practice. So we've had an established meditation in the morning. So that's one way to get it going. What do you do during that time? Well, I recommend a single-pointed meditation. Single-pointed mind is a technique of concentration where you focus on one thing and then you hold your attention there. So, for example, I like to use a visual focus device called a yantra in the beginning of my meditation. As I stare at my yantra on the wall at the beginning of meditation, I am forcing my eyes to hold still on the center of the yantra. And there's a little dot that's on the center of the yantra that I hold my gaze on. And by holding my gaze on that center dot, I am committing to not letting go. And by this sheer force of willpower and effort and activity in the beginning, I am silencing the noise. I am creating my own focal point. I'm willing my senses and attention to hold steadfast and still on one single point. And with this effort, it distracts you from everything else. And if your mind is distracted by a thought or a memory or a thought of what you're going to do later that day, you just simply return your gaze back to staring at the dot. And this concentration training will give you a very strong concentration ability. The ability to hold your mind still on a single point. So what we do is we take that warm-up of our concentration and then we move it inwardly. Now there's lots of things you can do inwardly. The meditation technique that I like to do is then applied to the chakras. And I will take my single-pointed concentration and focus on a chakra. And then with the steadfast holding of my attention on a chakra, I will then feel the chakra. So I say all this, and this is something I've said before, of course. This is nothing new. If you've listened to the podcast before, you know this is the type of meditation that I practice and I also teach. But I say this to bring to mind that to be successful in your meditation practice in a toxic world takes a tremendous degree of concentration ability. It takes the strength to hold your mind completely still on a particular point, which will cross over to everything else that you do. It will make your mind very strong, very tight. Nothing will be able to get in. If you don't want a negative thought to creep into your mind, it just doesn't creep into your mind because you're in control of your mind. Now, this happens over time, and of course, it's not just like working out. You're not going to become Arnold Schwarzenegger overnight, but with weeks, months, and years of practice, you can radically change your mind. You can change your mind so much that it never changes back. No. And the funny thing is that it can change back, but you have to override your karmic tendencies. You see, we've built up these habits, these tendencies in our mind that we tend to do unconsciously. So these unconscious habits, these patterns that our mind cycles through are like karmic patterns that we're just unconscious of, and they are basically creating our perception. They're basically creating a sense of who we are. Their thoughts, their memories, their perceptions, their ways in which our mind looks at the world, ways in which our mind talks to itself. The self-talk is all part of that. So the more you meditate, the more you become aware of all these subconscious, unconscious tendencies, tendencies and patterns that are going on in your mind. Let me get a sip of coffee here. So the process of meditation is a process of awakening. As we awaken, we become more aware. Just as you awake every day from sleep, you are aware of one thing. When you're sleeping, you're aware of what's going on in your mind, what's going on in the dream plane. Perhaps you're in an astral plane. And then you come back to the body. The body consciousness views the world in a pre-programmed way. These are karmic tendencies. We're born into this life with karmas from past lives. God, that coffee was good. Got me on a roll. We're born into this world with our karmas from past lives, which unfold as we age at a certain point. But the imprinting and conditioning we receive throughout this life is another set of karmic tendencies that we accrue and collect, and it becomes our current personality trait. It becomes our current set of, well, not so much our personality trait, I would say, but more or less our identity. Who we believe we are, who we identify as, the name, the history, the memory of who, what, when, and where, and what we did, etc., etc., all the way from our earliest memories. And this is another factor of karma. So it seems as if this type of stuff is pretty gosh darn important. So the only way to overcome it is through intense remodeling of the mind. The mind has its own tendencies just due to its sloppy, out of shape care that it's been given. So we begin meditation and we put our mind into a regimen. We put our mind through a workout, through training, and it gets stronger. It begins to respond to our willpower easier. We're able to bring our own thoughts into reality rather than just be influenced by the thoughts of others or the thoughts of the world. And this is a very important thing because the thoughts of the world can be toxic. It can infiltrate the mind, and for no gosh darn reason, you just all of a sudden feel bad. Why? Well, there's a certain, I don't want to get too far into conspiracy theories, man, but there's a certain, let's say, vibe of the world, and it's not necessarily super happy. Because if you're a super happy person, you're not going to want to go out and buy that thing because you're already happy. The world wants you to be a consumer. Consumers are hungry for things. They want to consume. They want that latest thing. They want that quick fix, fast food, new shoes, brand new whatever. They want to always get that rush, get that high from the buy. When you buy and you are addicted to buying, It's no different than being addicted to any type of dopamine stimulating chemical, drug, or other activity. And a lot of people have buying addiction. That's why Amazon is such a hot website. It's so easy to just buy Amazon Prime. So we're primed to be consumers by proxy, by living in this world, by not being given. I think we're not given the options enough. The only options we're given is like A, B, and C. It seems as such a very limited, narrow type of spectrum of options within this world. Meaning, why isn't the pursuit of enlightenment more popular? And of course, meditation and spirituality and yoga and other practices are becoming more popular because people are seeing the real value in the life-enhancing benefits that they can receive from these practices. But the consumer-based world, wants you to remain a consumer. Because if you're out of that loop, you're out of that cycle, well, you're not really feeding the economic machine, which, let's face it, someone's getting rich off of. Our consumptions, our patterns, our addictions, our need for that quick fix, fast food, new shoes, new cell phone, always on the cutting edge, brand names, etc., etc. What we're fed is, very low level, gross, keep you in the physical, keep you wanting more type of mentality. And this also is part and parcel of the toxicity. So our meditation practice needs to be extremely vigilant, if I can use such a word, because in this world we need to remain sharp. We need to be vigilant warriors to stay on the spiritual path, because there's so many things that can throw us off. Not only the temptations of the consumer stuff, but a lot of people have theories on the different wireless communications and how that could be influencing our energetic fields. I'm one to be informed but not afraid. I think that the world will always be something there to throw us off. And, ever since the dawn of man, there's been some excuse that we could possibly use about living in the world, living it up, living what we consider the good life, and just consuming and accruing and, satisfying those desires of sensual pleasure and such. But ultimately we see that just doesn't really get very fulfilling after a certain time. And we all know this. Even the most richest people in the world aren't necessarily the most happy. So we know that material wealth, money, while important, doesn't necessarily fulfill us on a happiness level. And it certainly won't fulfill you on a spiritual level. The only way to get fulfilled on a spiritual level is by going beyond the body, going beyond the senses, and into the spiritual worlds. The worlds that you can get to through meditation. But to get to those worlds, because we live in such a toxic, gross world of low vibe, noise, in order to get into and out of this noise and into the stillness, into the realms of light in our meditation, and there are realms of light. Everything is light, everything is energy, but we see life through the senses and we see it as separate. We see it as solid. We see it as a solid liquid gas, because the frequency that we are perceiving the world, perceiving this field of energy with, making it seem solid. It's just an illusion, though. We know that everything is energy, everything is light, and the almighty science has proven this. You can't deny science, can you? Not these days. But even science agrees that life is energy, life is light, and there's different frequencies creating various densities. And as we ourselves train to open up our more subtle apparati, our subtle senses, our ability to feel, for example, as we discussed in the last podcast, available on Apple Podcasts. As you're able to tune back into your birthright, your ability to feel more subtle energy planes and become more still and more refined. You see, when you focus on the physical, you stay within a very low frequency vibratory rate, which is what, you are. You see what you are. The world is a reflection of your mind. So if you are always seeing the world a certain way, well, you should probably look in the mirror, because your mind is reflecting, the world rather is a reflection of your mind. So if you're always seeing something that you don't like, then, its chances are it's a reflection of something that's in you, in your mind, a way that you're perceiving perhaps incorrectly, or some sort of illusion has gotten there. But as I was saying, since the mind is like water, and when it becomes still, it becomes clear, it becomes less agitated, and as something becomes more still, the vibration, the frequency increases. And when our own perceptual antenna, our own ability to perceive, becomes more refined and finer, and is able to perceive on higher, more refined energy levels, then we are establishing, we're reestablishing, we're remembering our true ability, our birthright. Because when we're born physically into this world, we are pure. Of course, we're all, immediately toxified by a lot of things. The world, the medical establishment, et cetera, et cetera. As we lose our finer perceptual abilities, and this usually happens around, when we begin our indoctrination process through the education system, around age 5, 6, 7, we begin to lose our imagination. We begin to think more logically. We begin to become aligned with the system of, conditioning that we're all brought through in a public school system, for example, where we're taught how to view the world, and it becomes very repetitious, concrete, and solidified by the time we're 9 years old, and we've lost touch with our inner child. At that point, our ego is developed, usually by age 12 or so, and then it's usually what people go with for the rest of their lives, unless they're somehow impulsed or interested in meditation, to remember perhaps who and what they are prior to the conditioning and the toxic onslaught that we've accrued. And the conditioning itself is toxicity. Any type of impurity can be considered toxic to a pure mind. I, for one, me personally, I can't stand certain chemicals, chemical smells. They just make me sick. And, I don't like cigarettes. I don't like anything like certain perfumes. Really, really bother me. And whereas certain natural smells, I love. I love certain essential oils, the smell of nature, springtime, flowers. And it's such an interesting thing how we've become so chemically saturated by our deodorants, our perfumes, our shampoos, our soaps, and they're just all so full of perfumes and chemicals and lotions and you name it. That it coats us in a chemical bath that we are almost you know dumbed down by, in a way. Even our dryer sheets are toxic. Laundry detergent is toxic. And it's, if you get around somebody that's like really, really into dryer sheets and the clothes just like have this aura of this like chemical factory, it's ridiculous. We're so desensitized by our environmental pollutants, by the toxins and the toxic world that we live in, that it becomes very difficult to meditate in this world. So we have to become good meditators. We have to be very strict with ourselves. We have to be very vigilant and diligent. Is that a word? Diligent. That's what I meant to say. We have to be goddamn diligent with our meditation practice. Diligent. I like that. It's in the digital age. So, this takes a great deal of practice, but it also takes a great deal of patience. It's not going to happen overnight, my friend. And if you've been meditating or you've tried meditation, you know this. You have your good days, you had your bad days. Why is that? It's these mental tendencies, these karmas that just keep coming up. You gotta just keep trying. The best way to do it is to become just so motivated, so enthused that your daily practice is on fire. And if your daily practice isn't on fire, well, maybe you need someone to set that blaze for you. Maybe you need someone to inspire you. So come on over to my meditation group on Facebook, Meditation and Mindfulness. And message me on Facebook at Rob Zaremba. And if you have any questions on how to set that fire, how to establish that daily meditation practice, just shoot me a message. I'm here to help. And that wraps it up for this podcast today, folks. We live in a toxic world, but we're strong and we will prevail. The human spirit can survive. It can stand the test of time. It's just a different environment. And we ourselves have to kind of step up, become that road warrior, the spiritual path, and keep the faith. Okay, keep practicing meditation, and we'll see you guys in the next podcast. And don't forget to listen on Apple Podcasts if you're watching on YouTube. And don't forget to watch on YouTube if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.